Welcome to Portals of Perception, and welcome to Becoming Human, which is one of the portals we are developing in Portals of Perception. This is a portal where we inquire into humanity's future. And with me here today are Avshalom, Peter, and Kyriaki. And we have some starter prompts developed by Kyriaki and Avshalom. And Kyriaki, could you start us, please, with the prompt from you? And again, the beauty of how you frame this, I asked you, how would you propose to start this inquiry? And this was a spontaneous response, free of any concern of needing to shape the inquiry. That is part of what we do in the process. So where would you get us started?
It's great to be with you. And I am wondering whether we allow ourselves, and how often do we allow ourselves to be inspired and to be encouraged and to encourage from our own brilliance, but also from the brilliance of the other person or of the other nation, the other religion. And do we spend our whole lifetime, resources, energies, thoughts in forever, in a perpetual fight and in retreating and attacking? Or should we better spend our time and resources in forging an environment of cooperation, conversation, intercultural respect? And is that just a dream? Or can it be a pragmatic business plan? Like those first humans that during and after the Second World War actually took the care to form UNESCO or the United Nations, trying to bring peace in the minds of men and women during a devastating war for humanity. And does it have to start outside of us, or does it actually start from inside of us, from the way that we think? And how do we reprogram our mentality towards, and how do we educate ourselves, our loved ones, and the younger generations towards fostering ecologies of cooperation where anyone and everyone is important and can win?
Great. So 7 questions in one. We wouldn't expect anything less from you. So why would you frame the question in this way? Why are these important? Or frame differently, what propels these thoughts, these inquiries in you? How do you come about to I'm seeking for the feeling, the energy that propels this inquiry?
I mean, reality knocks on our door. For instance, the coronavirus, with all the craziness and the lucidity that it evokes. I think it's just a starter of what may also appear in the future. And it shows us that together we're stronger. So it feels that we're going from an era of charismatic leaders to charismatic teams, where cooperation is very important and where everyone has a part to play if he or she is at the right moment, at the right time. And the configuration of each nation and each religion and each person is important. It has a part to play.
Okay. So you're offering a little more context to the formulation of the question. You're not fully revealing the energy or the propelling sentiment, although it contains in what you are already offering and the energy that you bring to these inquiries. So great. Let's hold this as one starter. And actually, my instinct is to ask Avshalom, what inquiry do you bring to today? And then let's put that on the table as well, and let's play jazz with those two themes.
Right. Okay. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. When and if I turn my mind to think about the future, which is a challenging tasking because we are now these days persuaded to live in the present. Many things turn up, which range in the spectrum between hope and fear. And I see that I'm confronting from what I see, hear, read, feel, many scenarios that currently exist in the world that cover all this range. And a lot of them are fear-based, which is something that needs to be addressed. And I want to bring with me the sense of hope and the richness of the possibility that exists for us humans, and to try to forge a certain view or vision, because vision in this is very important, that sees what can be done that can improve our situation against the backdrop of a lot of difficulties, troubles, suffering, and unfortunate things that are happening and have been happening in our history for a long time. So it's basically hope and vision for a much elevated future than that we can come up with.
And your inquiry is how to begin to think and explore those possibilities with that range in mind, the fear and the hope.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so a very rich spectrum to begin with, and my sense is that the most productive way to do this is to embark on a journey, because a true inquiry is not a destination. A true inquiry is a journey. And I'm thinking that what I might want to try to do is to gradually open how I process what you both put forward, because you shared with me some of those themes in the last couple of days. And so I had some time to think how to process this. And what I think will be productive, and Peter is here with us as well, that as we go through this, we do a step at a time and we reflect on the process. And that we use this to build and share some practices as we approach the potential of those inquiries. Because what an inquiry really is it represents latent potential. And when we embark on the journey that the inquiry summons us to, we are ultimately embarking on the journey of releasing and revealing that potential. My starter premise with any inquiry, especially inquiries like those you presented, is always that I cannot assume, I cannot take for granted that I'm in the place where I am ready to embark on an answer. And I always have this working assumption that I need to do work in myself before the approach to response to the inquiry can be taken up. And there are three practices I often use. And those three practices, one of which I already demonstrated with Kyriaki, which is I would often ask, why is it important? What propels the inquiry, which is a practice of trying to sense into the potential of the inquiry more in the reasons, the motivations, the sentiments, the power that potentiates or is driving the person framing the question. So that's one practice that we're already sensing into. But then there are two other practices, and what they are informed by two premises. The first premise is our friend, always borrowed and inspired by our friend Albert Einstein, who said that we cannot solve our problems at the same level of thinking in which we created those problems. In other words, we have to embark on a journey to come to a different elevation or a different angle, or create for ourselves a different vantage point from which to look at the problem, because it is our level of process, level of existence, level of thinking that fashion the problem in the way we see it. That's premise one. The second premise is that before we can be prescriptive, before we can offer an intelligent response to any inquiry, we might need to be diagnostic in actually revealing more of what the case is, such that as we do so, that becomes the invitation for the intelligence that we are seeking, because we're not merely seeking to answer a question, we're seeking to invite the intelligence within which there may be various answers to those inquiries and promotions from Kyriaki about how can humanity transcend conflict and war and come into collaboration and cross-pollination and operate at a higher level, which, by the way, if we can do that, we can answer some of the inquiries from Avshalom about the hopeful future rather than the fearful future, one in which there is actually sustainable, regenerative story of the future rather than a scenario that ends up in some kind of a terminating event for humanity and for the planet. So these are the two premises that often guide me in when a question is presented, actually taking a step back, staying with the question, allowing the question to percolate and ferment in my process before I launch into what might be a way to think about it. Now, the good news is I've developed this practice not as a philosophy student. I've actually developed this practice as a pragmatic consultant in the world of business. So in a way, I have the validation that this approach works both on philosophical, spiritual, developmental inquiries and on real organizational, strategic, real life issues, and I can bring those two ends. Let me pause here just to provide you a space to respond, because I'd like for us to do this in a collaborative way. And so every step that we make, in this case, I'm trying to instantiate the infrastructure of the process that I'm going to propose, and I share these two premises, the Einstein provocation and the diagnostic versus prescriptive provocation, to, in a way, reason why we're going to take the approach that we're about to take. Let's see if any one of you want to make any comment or response to that so far.
Yes, I would, Aviv. It is very clear from what you have quoted from Einstein that changes need to happen in order for a different result to occur. And one of the biggest questions is, what kind of changes are necessary to get a different result? It is quite a common understanding in the world these days that you cannot really change the world before you change the way the humans that live in this world and behave in this world and cause things to happen in this world would start to do it in a different way. That would provide and it can be a totally different result. That's part of the areas of the answer that is quite understandable today. The changes need to happen inside each individuals, and from there to filter through to families, societies, communities, and eventually leadership, because leadership is paramount in creating the state of affairs that we are in. So it's another big question. How do we get a different kind of leadership?
You are naturally accelerating us 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps in the conversation, and I don't blame you for it. It's all right. These are the territories we're about to move into. The two caveats I'll offer, or two awarenesses I'll offer to the points this main point you made, which is the Gandhi point, okay, which Kyriaki spoke to as well when you said earlier, to change the world, I must begin by changing myself. The challenging awareness in what you're offering is indeed that many people will begin by resisting even the premise that they need to change anything about themselves. They would want the world to coalesce and conform to their set of values and beliefs. But so that is one of the problems we need to address. This is why I said we have to be diagnostic, because what you're surfacing is one of the challenges to face. And I'm going to propose not 1, but 12 challenges that we need to address if we are to address this territory. I think you can intuit what's coming your way. So anything at this point, Peter or Kyriaki, that you want to offer, just as we are, again, what we are trying to demonstrate here is a practice. The meta practice we're trying to demonstrate is the idea that if you're going to approach an inquiry, if you're going to approach a domain, if you're going to approach anything, a good mindset is not to assume that I may be able to climb the Everest just from anywhere. I'd need to get to base camp. I need to make sure I have with me the right provisions. I need to make sure that I'm fit. In other words, I need to engage in a whole preparatory work to create the scaffolding to embark on a journey. And I propose that journeying with an inquiry is a bit like that. And we are still in using the conversation today to instantiate that point, which is you need to make the journey before you can make the journey. To use what you framed, Avshalom, you need to ask what are the changes that need to take place before a change can happen. Same idea. Or we need to build the scaffolding before we can build the building. Same idea.
I would add in the thought that having the right question is something that can take you quite a long way in your, at least in the, at any point in the journey. The right question is a good leader and teacher. And I've always found it curious that you could ask pretty much anyone that you meet, what is the purpose of human life? And I don't think you'd get two people that would say the same answer or say it in the same way or come from the same place about it. And so as a civilization, it makes me wonder, well, if we don't have consensus about that, why aren't we trying to find some consensus about that? Why isn't that, when we look at why the stars, why the universe, how does the planet work, all these things, we rarely frame it in a way that would help explain our role in it or what we might be doing here. So I would, I would just say that's curiosity of we've all been born into something already in progress, and so how do we understand that and our role in that thing that was here before us and will be here after us? How do we understand that? It might help us in our time here to explore those places.